And even though I loved the product and the idea, and people loved the product, if you have a great product, it doesn't always mean you have a viable business. Every time I've pivoted, I got some incredible validation about something.
Welcome back to Life from Within. I'm your host, Kelly Dwyer. This show explores the wisdom we gain from the challenges in our work and careers, and how those experiences help shape who we become. I'm a coach for executives, entrepreneurs, and seasoned professionals who are at inflection points. I help them find clarity, make sound decisions, and move forward with greater confidence. I created Life from Within because I'm fascinated by how life's harder moments invite us to grow, and our work lives offer rich terrain for that exploration. Today's episode is sponsored by Peak State Coffee. Peak State Coffee is famous for creating the world's first whole bean coffee infused with adaptogenic and functional mushrooms. It's specialty coffee that promotes wellness without compromising the traditional rich taste of freshly brewed coffee. Stick around until the end of the episode to get a code for 20% off your order. Today, I have with me Danny Walsh. Danny Walsh is the founder and CEO of Peak State Coffee. It's a Boulder, Colorado-based company offering specialty organic coffee with added health benefits and a strong commitment to environmental sustainability. Peak State is also rooted in a bigger idea that the businesses we build can reflect what we value and contribute to meaningful change in the world. With a background in engineering and sustainable business, Danny has built the company into a certified B Corp, a member of 1% for the Planet, and has been selected as one of the purpose-built 100 fastest growing mission-driven companies in the U.S. Welcome, Danny.
Thanks for having me, Kelly.
Thanks for being on, and congratulations on being recognized as a fast-growing, mission-driven company.
Thank you. I think that's something that I'm uniquely excited about. I think some people might just be happy for their business to work. And I guess for me, I wanted it to make an impact at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, that's been clear. So in the lead up to this recording, I listened to some of your previous interviews on other podcasts, and it comes through loud and clear. Your commitment to sustainability, your commitment to building a company that has impact and that is one that also gives you a good life. Before Peak State was a coffee company, before it was even an idea, you were going through a hard, challenging time in your life. And it's really what was the origin of what eventually became Peak State. Tell us a little bit about what was happening in your life at that time.
I'll go all the way back to sort of the source of everything, where I was in college, finishing up engineering school. And I think the combination of my environment and maybe my workload and maybe my diet and lifestyle at the time was all converging on kind of a rock bottom moment for me. I was having a health condition where it was technically an autoimmune disease, and I had a doctor telling me I was going to have a lifelong disease as a result, and that I needed to manage my sleep and my stress. And this was sort of a rock bottom point for me where I said, wow, I really need to look at how I'm living and get myself into a better environment. And for me, what I knew I needed just intuitively was I need to be near nature. I need to get out of a city. I need to reconsider my work. I'm staring at computer screens all day. My college program was unique in the sense that we were actually working in our field while being students, so on these paid internships called co-ops. And I got a very close simulation on what my life was going to be like had I stayed the course. And so I really just cut everything. I said, I'm going to put everything at least on pause, maybe permanently. And I'm going to go get myself to nature, spend some time eating healthy foods, moving my body, regulating my nervous system, and then see what happens to my health. I was particularly having a gut-related issue with an autoimmune disease. And it turns out after 4 months of spending time away from a city and in nature, a lot of my symptoms went away completely. And to me, that was a fascinating journey. And so Peak State is more than just a coffee company. It's about holistic health. And how can we make it easy for people to have health in their own hands at home? You know, it's easy to forget a vitamin, but you never forget your morning coffee. So if we can be a brand that helps provide people with resources on holistic health and healthy living, then I know we're succeeding. And if we can also be a delightful cup of coffee that tastes good and is healthy in that morning routine, even better.
Peak state, holistic, be a brand that teaches people, gives people resources to live a better life holistically. There's been a journey of you healing and being an entrepreneur. I mean, you're in
It's year 6 of peak state. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. How has your definition of peak state changed since you started the coffee company?
I wouldn't say that my definition of peak state has changed. It's an aspirational state of wanting to help everybody get to operating at their highest level. So that hasn't changed very much. But I think one thing that's been really interesting is how I have felt relative to that aspirational state throughout the entrepreneurial journey. I have a brand that is about health, but then in the pursuit of building a business as an entrepreneur, I've had moments where I start to neglect my self-care. And then to have a brand that is so obviously valuing health, and yet if I'm neglecting my own, it instantly becomes a paradox. If I'm showing up and I'm interacting with customers and I am running myself ragged and exhausted, how I show up affects everything. And I am the face of the brand. And so that has been something to constantly do a reality check on. Like, am I living with integrity towards what this is all about?
What would you say drives the forgetting of yourself? Is it your own ambition? Is it accountability to other people? What drives that?
I think it has to do with being an entrepreneur and building a business. You have an idea and then you need to build it into a revenue generating system that can hopefully pay your bills. The need to survive personally, financially, is what drives somebody to feel the pressure to make something succeed. And the burden or the challenge of trying to do that can be so much on one person. You have to do more things than one person can do. You do way more things than one person with a regular job. And I think that it has to do with having that greater amount of stress and load on your plate and then having to deal with that. What gives? Does your sleep give? Does your personal life and relationships give? What exactly is the thing that compromises so that you can do this really hard thing?
What are the top two things that give for you first?
In the beginning, I didn't have a lot of balance, and it took a while for me to learn how to separate signal from noise. There's a million things you can do, but there's always 3 of the most important things that you can do today that if you just did those, you'd be moving the needle forward. So yeah, sure, in the past, it was personal relationships and sleep that I would give up. But now it's having a to-don't list, not to-do list, let's call it that, to really take that off of the focus so that you really focus on those things with the highest leverage.
And how do you identify those things with the highest leverage? So, I mean, you can step back every quarter or every year and think about the highest value things. You can do a weekly planning. You can do a daily planning. What are your practices that keep you focused on the highest leverage items?
So lately for me, the first part of my practice is to get everything out of my head, especially late at night and I can't sleep and I just have all these ideas. It's first about capturing it all and outputting it. We have so much input in today's world. We're listening to media all over the internet and we're scrolling on social media and we're always inputting and we're not designed for that. And so particularly when I feel like I'm spiraling with ideas, I need to just get it all written out and it doesn't even matter if it makes sense. And then I like to look at all of that and then I will put a little asterisk next to the things that are the most important to focus on next. And then I'll try to rank them and I'll have no more than 6 of them. Ideally, it would be 3, but I do 6 of them. And that's the order that I need to do them in. I'll probably do that at least once a week. That's what works for me. And it might be different for everyone.
Yeah. And that's your trigger. The trigger is when you're feeling like you're spiraling, like the number of ideas in your head, there's just no more room and there's a whirlwind in there.
And I know that the only way to settle my mind and thus my nervous system is to get all of that out of me and then look at it, let the dust settle.
Yeah. Do you write with a pen and paper or do you do that on a
I
computer?
do. The computer is, for me particularly, it's too distracting. Once you're in a phone or a computer, all of a sudden, ooh, I should check email. Ooh, I should go browse. What does this word mean? I'm going to go Google that. Before you know it, you're reading the news.
Oh
It's
my God.
just so dangerous.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So the equivalent in the physical world is you walk through a doorway and all of a sudden you're in the room and you think, wait, what did I come in here for? Right? And the same thing happened actually before the episode. I went on LinkedIn to just refresh my memory of your LinkedIn profile, and I saw that I had some notifications. So I went to the notifications first, and then 5 minutes later, I was like, oh, I came here to look at Danny's profile. Let's do that. It's
Exactly.
it's real. At the beginning, before we hit record today, we took a minute and did a minute of silence, eyes closed, just to land and become present. Is that something you do regularly?
Yeah, I try to meditate every day, and I've really tried to take the pressure off of what meditation means. I think it's so easy to psych yourself out of any habit by making it overwhelming and strict. Like, oh, I'd love to go for a run, but I can't run 26 miles. Well, that's just not what it's about. If you get out of your house in the morning and you go for a walk, that's fantastic. And I think that I look at meditation the same way, where it doesn't matter if I have thoughts, it doesn't matter how long it is. If I can take some time to just try to become aware and bring myself into the present moment, I notice that I can quiet the chatter in my mind. And that is something that really helps me regulate my nervous system personally.
You launched your business in 2020 amidst the pandemic. And from what I understand, you pivoted a couple of times. You started with ready-made coffee, and then you went to chaga tea bags, or maybe you started with chaga tea bags and then went to the ready-to-drink coffee. And then ultimately you landed where you are now, where you've got whole bean coffee. You also sell ground coffee. In all of these pivots, sometimes we get really attached to something, and letting go and making a pivot is really hard. And, we have all these narratives in our head about why we can't let it go and why we should persevere and this, that, and the other thing. In your pivoting earlier on in your business, was there any time where you were really attached and there was a narrative that you were telling yourself that you had to shift or move away from?
Yeah, of course, right? What's so interesting about entrepreneurship is you can do it from a place of ego or you can do it from a place of service. And the idea that you might have can come from the ego. And the ego wants to see that idea come to fruition. But then at the end of the day, we're all in business to serve our customers. And if what the customers want is different than what the idea your ego came up with, for me personally, I had to solve problems for people. And that was the way for my business to grow. And sometimes that meant my ideas were garbage compared to what the people told me they needed to solve their problems. So that's how I navigated through those pivots. And prior to being an entrepreneur, I was a product manager, and we often had to kill products that weren't working, that were tying up resources and time and attention to say a better yes to the things that were working. And I think that I've been grateful to have that sort of perspective as I enter the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, I bet that's served you well because you've seen that it's not the end of the world if you let go, and that there will be something new to embrace, a new perspective, a new product, a new idea.
And there's always learning, right? And it wasn't always just needing to serve customers. Sometimes I learned that I needed to serve my business model. I had a mentor that would say that's never going to be viable economically. And even though I loved the product and the idea, and people loved the product, if you have a great product, it doesn't always mean you have a viable business. And also in service to the truth of what is needed to move forward. Every time I've pivoted, I got some incredible validation about something. The health benefits I was seeking to share were resonating, but the form that I was sharing them was not going to be a sustainable business. And so I think every time you get the opportunity for feedback and you can still take that into your pivot and figure out what that next iteration looks like moving forward.
You mentioned a mentor. I've also heard you mention business coach and having a therapist. First of all, I love that you've leaned into support. Was that a natural for you? Was that easy for you to say yes to getting support, or was that a hurdle you had to get over?
That was definitely a hurdle. I had to get over. My tendency, I've always been sort of a rugged individualist. Like I can do everything. And once I reached a breaking point about 2 or 3 years into my business where I really couldn't do everything. And I read this book by Benjamin Hardy called Who Not How. And it really pushed me to think bigger about stopping to do the things that were easy for somebody else to do so that I could free myself up to focus on those high leverage things, and realizing that if this was ever going to work, it's going to take a village and I need to ask for help, and I can't do it all myself. And so I need to learn from those who have built businesses and seek out mentors and coaches who can help me see the better path. And then I need to find someone who I can talk to about the struggles of the entrepreneurial journey to help me deal with some of my personal struggles. So I found a therapist, and my poor therapist doesn't know if he's a business coach or a therapist, but anyways, it's something that took a while for me to be willing to ask for help, but I think that surrendering to that has been the best thing that I've done for myself on the journey.
Was part of the resistance to surrendering to that, that somehow that meant you were failing if you were to ask for help, or that you were less of an entrepreneur or not as smart, or what was the story that you had to shift?
It was more financial. It was, oh, I don't need to invest in that. I can figure it out. There's resources. I don't need to invest in a coach. I don't need to invest in a therapist. It was never that I didn't think they would help me. It was just that. And then I learned that some of the most highly successful people out there are spending a lot of money on those things. Even coaches have coaches. And it was a healthy reframe for me saying, wait a minute, this is an investment in myself and everything is downstream of that. So it's important to make that investment because what you get in, you then also get back out.
And you feel that way. You feel like financially there's been a return on your investment in those
Absolutely.
things. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm getting kind of meta here, but it's like the entire entrepreneurial journey is tuition for an incredible education. My business is doing well, but even if it wasn't, what you get out of the entrepreneurial journey, especially the coaches that you hire and the mentors that you meet with along the way, is worth an incredible thing that it doesn't even matter if your business succeeds or fails because of how the journey has enriched you and prepared you for what might be next for you. So I feel like I've sped up 15 years in my career by being an entrepreneur and by learning from those who I've invested in.
I love that. Sometimes I get a learning high. I'll learn something and I feel kind of high from it and I want to go share it with people. Is there something like a reframe or a mindset shift or something you learned through one of your relationships with these supports, whether it was a mentor or a coach or your therapist, that you find yourself sharing? You've shared it multiple times with other people, like, hey, there's this perspective or this mindset shift that I've found really helpful and I want to share it with you.
Yeah, I love to share things. I love to take tidbits. I think I'm very consultative. So it doesn't make sense for me to take something that really resonated with me and tell everybody that same thing. I love to hear what someone's struggling with and working through and then bring the thing. Because I'm like a library. I'm like a soup of a bunch of random different things I've read, listened to, people who have said things. But I don't really bring the blanket thing to everyone. I just love to hear what someone's working with and then share a little particular thing that I think is relevant to that.
Okay, I get that. So it's an in the moment response to who's in front of you, their situation.
Yeah, you got to diagnose before you prescribe.
Yeah. Entrepreneurs are some of the most optimistic people I've ever met. Now, some people are born like that, and some people have to work harder to be that way. I'm curious, where are you on that spectrum? And what do you do to move yourself up the optimism spectrum?
Yeah, I think a lot of people say that being an entrepreneur is more of a personality type than it is a career. You're just somebody who has what Gary Hirschberg calls pathological optimism. You're optimistic to your detriment sometimes, but it's what allows you to get started. I wanted to go for really hard things, go for really challenging things and see what I could accomplish. I read a quote in a book, though, that really pushed me over the edge, which was, everything is figure outable.
Yes.
And once I read that, I was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. It's a good reminder when we're facing something challenging because it helps our brains, for at least the way it lands for me, it helps my brain to move away from panic or gripping or like constriction, contraction into a place of, okay, let's just take a breath. Let's take a breath and identify what is possible here. What are my options? So you've got a team of people. Your model primarily has been, and maybe this is evolving, but your business model primarily has been people are going to discover us in person at farmers markets and other in-person events. They experience us and then we bring them into our world. And in an ideal world, they become a subscriber who receives our coffee regularly. You've got a team of people that help you with the farmers markets that do those for you now. Is there anyone else that's close to you that you work with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I have my operations manager, Isabel, and she handles everything from production management, forecasting, order fulfillment. So she's kind of making sure everything is happening. And I'm predominantly focused on strategy, sales, marketing. And I also have a full-time executive assistant that helps me with a lot of administrative work.
Okay, great. I've worked with a number of very optimistic entrepreneurs. Have there been any experiences that you've had with your team members where your pathologically optimistic entrepreneurial personality has clashed with someone else's personality that is maybe more pragmatic or isn't quite as naturally optimistic?
Yeah, no, I love the question I'm hearing you ask me about is sort of that clash between the visionary and integrator. And I think what's interesting for me is I think I'm an integrator and I actually have to push myself to be more of a visionary. So unfortunately, I think my business suffers a little bit because I'm not more of a visionary with an incredibly big, hairy, audacious, lofty goal. I think I'm living a little bit too in reality. And so I have not had those conflicts that you're describing, but I'm trying to push myself to become the leader who can be inspiring and overwhelming a little bit more.
Inspiring and overwhelming. Do you really want to be overwhelming?
It sounds like the best business CEOs are visionary types. What does Elon Musk want to do? He wants to colonize Mars. Steve Jobs, what did he want to do? Steve Jobs, he wanted to put a dent in the universe. I mean, I think that I need to push myself to have a grander vision that makes my team say, what?
This is interesting. Okay. I'm not sure I totally agree with you.
Tell me more. Push
Well,
back.
you want to build a business that makes an impact, that provides you with a good life. Some visionaries are really more obsessed. They're obsessed. And to what cost? Elon Musk, how many baby mamas does he have? What does that say about his ability to sustain relationships? I don't know. I don't know him personally, so I don't really know.
And it all comes down to what are you optimizing for, right? If we're having a conversation around optimizing for being a very successful business leader, different than saying we're optimizing for having a healthy family life. I'm
Yeah.
not saying I necessarily model after any of these entrepreneurs that I mentioned. I'm just saying they think big. And in the context of business, I noticed that I would benefit from doing more of that. Now, but looking holistically, I think it's about figuring out what are you optimizing for, right?
Yeah. And if balance is one of the things that you do want in your life, I guess how big does the vision need to be? And for you, it doesn't sound like it's about money. It's about impact for you. It's about holistic living. Like another word for that is balanced living, right?
Yeah.
But I understand the desire to want to explore your own personal potential around being a visionary. I get that. And so how are you challenging yourself? Like, what are the practices that you're engaging in, if any? I mean, it could just be that it's a really strong desire right now. And that's what it is.
Yeah. So I really like Benjamin Hardy's frameworks. He has a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And it's this idea that if you wanted to take your organization and become 10 times larger than you are, let's say, for example, revenues, then you may have to choose a different pathway than the one that got you here. What got you here might not get you there. And in order to scale, if you have a lot of complexity in your system, that's not going to scale very well. You have to reduce that complexity. Only simple things can scale. And so what I try to do when I'm goal setting and planning, it's what do I have to say no to? What needs to be not the focus? And what's the new pathway? And so I think that as I try to become the best leader and entrepreneur that I can be, it's about constantly looking at what I need to stop doing. Again, hater loves Steve Jobs. He used to always say, innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. And I tell you, every day I have 1,000 things that are swimming around. So I have to constantly try to deprioritize them. So I really do believe that. So I try to take whatever goal I have and I try to make it even bigger. And then I try to shorten the timeline that I have for that goal. And I think what that does is it really forces me to see the only signal, the only path that is going to get me there, because I've made an impossible goal on an impossible timeline. And so that's probably the best example that I can think of as of trying to step into that visionary role.
I love it. And do you have an example of where it's worked for you yet? Meaning you've made the goal impossible and the timeline impossible. And in order to discern, in order to help you see the only possible path to get there.
Yeah. So I can give two examples in my business specifically because we sell wholesale, we sell on Amazon, we sell on our website, we sell both subscription and one-time orders on our website. The other channel is farmers markets. So we have all these different channels we can focus on. And when I look at everything that we do, it's incredibly distracting. They're all rabbit holes you can go down. And I realized that none of it mattered except for the fact that if we do farmers markets, it'll result in online subscribers. Forget Amazon, forget wholesale. That's the simplest path forward. We do one thing, we put that in, we get this out. The one thing that we're optimizing for, we get that out. So everything else is a distraction. We can just focus on doing more of that. And that's what's taken us from 100,000 to 500,000. And then moving forward, doing the same thing. The entire system that got us here doing just farmers markets to get online subscribers might be totally different. If we want to be 10 times bigger, it might only be running meta ads to get subscribers. And then I have to completely stop putting resources into farmers markets and put all my resources and attention into meta ads. And so that's just an example of the way that I've been using this framework and how I see myself using this framework moving forward.
That's scary. I mean, it's amazing. And the whole idea of, okay, farmers markets are what got us here. And I might have to make a decision to stop putting resources, time, and attention into farmers markets and instead try this other thing that I'm sure you've done some testing with, right? You'll probably test it before you dive in with both feet. Still, though, even if you've done some testing and it looks promising, making that switch is not for the faint of heart.
And that's exactly right. You can look at the average business or the average person. Most of us are doing more things than we should be. And we know that we need to simplify, but we can't because it's scary. And look, I haven't done it, but this is the way that I see myself moving forward, and absolutely data driven. So I think that the hardest thing to accept is what got you here may not get you there.
Yeah. You're data driven. What do you do with your intuitive hunches? Do you try to get data to validate them, or how do you rationalize the two?
Yeah. Now we're getting into personality, right? So I'm both an intuitive thinker. So the thinker makes me very analytical. The intuitive thing makes me have that strong hunch. And I think that I have to trust the data as an entrepreneur. But you have to trust the right kind of data, learning to parse through it, the data that shows you what people are spending money on and not what they say they might spend money on. And it doesn't mean that it's easy, but I think that a hunch, again, it might come from the ego, and then the data comes from service. You can see what's working, you can react to that. So that's how I separate the two.
Okay. You have multiple truths. You have a commitment to positively impacting people's health through your offering, through your coffee. You have a commitment to building a profitable business so that you can continue to be in business and have a good life. You have a commitment to building a business in a way that is more gentle on the planet. How do you satisfy all requirements in your decision making?
It's a great question. On one hand, a business being profitable is the lifeblood of the business and allows it to sustain. So that needs to be what you're optimizing for. But on the other hand, as a founder of anything or even a leader, you need to know your why. It's not dollars. It's what is going to get you out of bed early to do what you need to do today. And so I think that the why is everything. And I make sure that why for me in this case of our mission is to help people and nature thrive. And that being the why, that's what keeps me going. But it is definitely a Venn diagram of cool, we have purpose here, we have profit there. We got to have a little bit of both and got to balance the two. So it's definitely a dance between the two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Last question. What is present for you now as a person who is growing? So you are an entrepreneur, but you're also a person who cares about his health and has a partner and likes to get out into nature. For you, what's the most present theme for you that you're moving through?
Yeah, I think like right now, in this particular moment, technology has evolved where there's so much distraction. Some of the biggest companies in our country with the most investment have been trying to figure out how to keep our attention away from what matters. And that's social media and that's the news is trying to pull us away. And I think for me, what is present is really trying to pay attention to my screen time on my phone, even on my computer, and figure out how to navigate right now. And even in the workplace, just efficiently, because there's so many ways to just spiral. And I notice myself checking email. And even if it is genuinely for work, I'm checking social media direct messages to see if there's some sort of business partnership opportunity. And the thing that I struggle with the most now is how to quiet the mind and focus the mind and notice myself when I'm deviating from the most important thing. The main thing is to keep the main thing, as Stephen Covey says. And that is a constant battle. I think that trying to balance my nervous system as a result of all these distractions of the doom scrolling and the news has been one of my biggest goals as an entrepreneur, because you're already so worried if you can make payroll the next month, if your business is growing or if it's declining. And then you have all this macro environmental worry that is programmed by these social media algorithms. And so the main thing for me has been trying to figure out how can I control my nervous system so that I can get the results that I need to get and the balance in my life that I need. One of my mentors in Boulder, who has been in the natural product space, he says, if you want to change the world, start by changing your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had to adopt all sorts of different tools and practices to try to get that under control. And that's making sure I get that morning sunlight, that exercise, doing things like breath work. I'm really into things like cold water immersion, anything to take you into that present moment and out of the future or the past. And nervous system regulation and attention control are really the two most pressing things for me right now. I'm curious, do you feel that way about either of those things right now, Kelly? How do you deal with either the distraction or what is trying to keep you ungrounded? How do you reground yourself?
I do it a lot of ways, getting outside. And I don't always succeed at this, but leaving my phone behind when I do, so that I'm looking at the green trees, I'm hearing the birds, I'm hearing whatever nature sounds there are. That helps. I love breath work. I've reignited my interest in breath work over the last several months. And so I'm trying all different kinds of things. The cold plunge is a little much for me. I like a cold finish in a shower, can
For
really
sure.
do a lot. Meditation, but again, that's one of those practices that I can beat myself up about because it's not long enough or regular enough or this or that. Or so I enjoyed our minute before we started recording.
That's great.
Yeah. I agree with you that the intensity of distraction is much greater now than it was in the past. I think it's only going to continue to intensify. The rate of change, I mean, you open up the news app, who knows what you're going to see, right? Who knows?
Yeah, that's real.
So, Danny, if people want to connect, try out the coffee, follow you, where should they go?
Sure. Yeah, I created a discount code for your
Ooh,
listeners at peakstatecoffee.com/life. And that's for 20% off. So anyone
nice.
can try it out. We also just have a free sample program on our website. You can try it out that way as part of a subscription trial. I hope that allows somebody to try it out for $1 a day for your health.
One thing we didn't even talk about was actually what the health benefits are, what you're doing and how you're using mushroom and all of those good things. I think people will discover that when they go to the website. Is there anything in particular you want to say about that?
I think a lot of people have heard of mushroom coffees or maybe this idea of a healthier coffee routine. Maybe some people are feeling like some coffees upset their stomach or make them really jittery. What we've tried to do at Peak State is take away some of those downsides of coffee and keep all of the upsides. So more health benefits, same taste and flavor that you seek from your morning coffee, but less of those downsides that maybe don't make you feel the best. And we've done that with some health benefits that come from mushrooms. So mushrooms like lion's mane, which is well known for focus and mental clarity and memory. And all these different functional mushrooms like chaga and reishi can support your immune system. So just something you can do for yourself every day as an insurance against getting sick. And you never forget to do it. It's easy to forget a vitamin, but if you are a coffee drinker, you don't forget to do that every day.
Right. I am not going to forget my coffee. That's for sure.
There you go. And I know you're a big coffee person yourself, Kelly.
Yeah, I love it. Danny, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I'll share all the links in the show notes with people.
That sounds great. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for that thoughtful conversation, Danny. You know, I was interested in how Danny is challenging himself to become more visionary. He described a framework from Benjamin Hardy's book, 10X is Easier Than 2X. When you make the goal dramatically bigger and you shorten the timeline, you can't continue to rely on the same strategies that got you to where you are now. It forces you to simplify. You have to let go of distractions, and you have to find the unique path that's going to give you that 10X result. I also appreciate that Danny's not just applying that framework to grow for growth's sake. He's committed to the greater impact that he wants to have with his business. He's committed to building a life that he enjoys. Curious to experience Peak State Coffee for yourself? Go to peakstatecoffee.com/life and receive 20% off your order. You can also follow Peak State on Instagram at Peak State Coffee. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time on Life from Within.